here with Dark Rangers Inc. and I can't believe it's already been a month since our first dark sky adventure, and we are back heading up to River Forest Campground again. And this time we went after one of the most challenging targets in the Northern Hemisphere, and we're able to get some really awesome results on something that should take 20 plus hours to really be visible in just a weekend. So stay tuned for that. I'm also going to cover some tips on some Milky Way landscape astrophotography as well, because on night 2 I have 2 setups going at the same time, so it should be a good episode. If you can't get out of the city, or you couldn't this month, you can live vicariously through me, so stay tuned.
It could have been me in a suit, but you had your cake and you eating it too. Fuck, you never thought you'd go back on your word. Broken promises set me back down to earth, black down on the curb. Guess time heals all, accept this. Cut deep enough to leave me infected.
I was talking to the owners of the campgrounds and telling them what I was doing, and they love the idea of potentially hosting a workshop. So if you live in the Midwest, whether it's Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, once we know the date, I would definitely invite all of you guys to come out, whether you need to participate in the workshop and learn how to do deep space astrophotography, or if you just want to set up and shoot at the campground, all are welcome, and it will definitely be a good time. So for now, we've got about a 3.5 hour drive plus a stop or 2. So I'll see you guys when we get to the campground, and we'll set up and get ready for night 1.
I fell victim to all those intentions. Because of you, I can't make a connection. Everybody in question knew you got around. Guess I loved you in denial. Shouldn't have let receive.
Okay, we got to the campground and got my little cabin. It's nothing crazy, but it's definitely a lot nicer than sleeping in a tent. Even has a little air conditioning unit, which is fantastic for during the day, and even a little fridge. The only downside is I asked if it had a clearing, and it does, but it's about 42 degrees to get over the trees in the direction I'm shooting. So I might go back and look at where I was last time and potentially risk leaving my stuff out where I had my tent, just because I'll be able to get images a lot longer. Now I know obviously best conditions are above 40 degrees anyway, but it'd be nice to, you know, be able to start shooting a little earlier than that in the night. Otherwise I'm going to be limited to probably, I don't know, maybe 3 hours a night instead of like 4.5. But obviously it'll be better data because it'll be only when it's high up in the sky. So we'll see. I'm going to go look and just remind myself how much clearance there was at my old campsite, and then we'll make the judgment call from there. I don't love the idea of having my scope far away, and then if something does go wrong in the middle of the night, I won't be able to monitor it from where I'm sleeping. Whereas, you know, when I'm sleeping in my tent, I do tend to kind of wake up every couple hours, and with the ASIAIR, obviously I can keep contact with it on my phone. So it's still about 40 degrees, so I pick up about 5 degrees, but it's gotten really overgrown. And so this is where I had my scope last time. It's like almost waist-high ferns everywhere. I don't know. I think I'm just going to deal with the conditions by the cabin. That way I can have the scope right next to me, and I don't really gain much by having it set up here. I think we're just going to have to wait for it to get a little higher in the sky, so we're losing a little bit of time, but we're also guaranteeing good quality in terms of the exposure time we do get. So, and that is a huge flag. Get out of there. Gonna head back to the cabin, start to get my scope set up, and then we'll check back in. So we got everything set up in terms of the scope and under the cover, batteries ready to go, and tripod. I'm going to do a Milky Way time lapse with my Nikon mirrorless, and then This is actually really nice to actually have a cabin for once. So they're just twin beds, but got the stove set up, and I have some meals that just require boiling water. They're actually pretty tasty, and yeah, got everything in here ready to go. And so now we just have to wait for it to get dark. But yeah, it's much nicer being in here than a tent, that's for sure. You know, literally with air conditioning and everything, it's about 85, so you know, it's comfortable, but having the AC is definitely nice. No cell signal at all though. It's usually a good sign for Astro, but kind of forces you to just connect with nature. You don't really have a choice. So now that I have it set up, I planned it so that it should be going to the northeast, and so I set it up so that that would be kind of the biggest canopy. It's going to go like in that direction and then kind of come across and peak right about there. That's why I set it up on this side of the canopy, just to give it as much as possible. There really isn't a ton of sky up there for us, but it is what it is. We'll make it work. So I'll check back in when it gets darker. So it's 9 o'clock, and because this is literally like the night before the longest night of the year, it's still a little bit light out. And this place just transforms if you just listen. It's so crazy peaceful. So I've got the camera set up because we're gonna do a Milky Way time lapse as it comes up over the canopy, and then obviously the main scope. I'm just gonna get the cover off. Hopefully the next 20 or 30 minutes it'll be dark enough so we can get polar line and get going here. But yeah, it's go time. And thought this looked kind of cool. A little stove. Looks kind of cool with the lights off. We're just boiling some water because all you do is add boiling water to this. And man, that thing boils so fast. I love this little burner by GSI. It's kind of a waste to have all this just to boil some water, but gonna get that going, and then once that's done, go get everything set up and hopefully get imaging soon. It's the next morning, and some good news with 25-minute exposures back home in Bortle 5, like I was saying, you could not see the squid at all. With 6-minute exposures last night in Bortle 2, you can. The downside is the reason I was shooting 6-minute exposures instead of 10 or even 20 minutes was because I could not get guiding to work. I'll overlay a picture of what the stars were looking like. They wouldn't really focus really well. Not horrible, not bad enough. Like I've had them off focus more and it still guided well, but it was only correcting below the horizon line of the graph. So if this is the horizon, typically it'll go above, below, above, below. The graph line was surfing below the horizon line. And so the only thing I can think of is that the base isn't level. Okay, so this is Ryan from the future, and it looks like there was a little bit of play in my field flattener. There is a screw back here that I'm going to try to tighten to see if that can fix it. I think there was, when I looked back at the shots too, there'd be like up to ½ a degree of rotation between. And on night 2, because when I transport this, I loosened it and I do rotate it. On night 1, it was more vertical, so obviously you had the ability to have it wobble back and forth more. But on night 2, it was kind of off to the side, so once it leans, the slack was out of it. And so I think that's the cause of why I had the issue. So leveling was a good thought process, but in this case, I think that's what it is. I do have 2 of these 0.8 reducers, so I may swap it out while I try to problem solve, or potentially send this one back to get a new one if I can't fix it myself. So that was the cause. And then my time lapse didn't go great. I was having a hard time getting really good focus with my 15 to 30 f2.8. The canopy's pretty small too, so you can see the Milky Way go through it. I might switch to my 50 mil 1.4 lens because that will make the canopy look big. It kind of looked like the hole was really small with the wide angle lens. So we'll switch lenses. I'm gonna take the telescope off. Obviously I do wanna lock it in the cabin. since my campsite last time was really remote. It wasn't even an official campsite, but you know, obviously there's only one other person here, to be honest, but you know, I think it's a good Dark Ranger best practice to go ahead and lock your stuff up if you can. And I'm just, right now though, I'm gonna check level and make sure that isn't the issue. If it's not that, I really don't know what else to do. I really want to go to off-axis guiding, and this is just going to push me a little more too, because like you'll see the focus looked kind of weird, and the stars and the guide shots almost had they were almost slightly oblong. So I don't know if the camera was in there crooked. I tried to play around with that a little bit, but anyway, I'm starting to ramble. I'm gonna take a look and see what happened, and then we'll go from there. Real quick before I head out, it is really nice to have, it's like turning into like a big charging fest here. I've got my GoPro battery charger and my big battery, my little cooking section. My only wish is that there would be a bigger clearance in terms of the canopy. I am gonna do something potentially risky and try to find a spot that's maybe not right here that I can set up. Someone was telling me about this big rock thing formation that was up higher in elevation, and this huge rock face, and that would actually be really ideal to set the tripod on because it'd be on really stable ground. The only difference is I would be a several minute drive from my scope, and so I know that that's a little sketch, but we are kind of up in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town that has like a grocery store is 22 miles away. So like that's the kind of location we're at. Like Green Bay, Wisconsin is an hour and a half away. That's like the closest real civilization. So we'll see if I can find a place that looks really ideal to put the scope, and it doesn't look like people would have access to it easily. Go there and nab my scope, then it might be something that I consider. I don't know. I tend to have faith in people. I tend to be trusting, and sometimes that can bite you, but we'll check it out. So I'm gonna head into town, into White Lake. It's the closest town. It's about 20 minutes away. They have like this gas station, grocery store, mini thing. That's the closest place to get any type of food. They do have a pretty decent little deli that makes good sandwiches, so that's nice. We'll get some food, and then I'm going to scope out and see if there are any places, I mean like this massive farm field where I could just set up and have like a totally clear sky in all directions. I mean, yeah, there's like places everywhere, but a place that like isn't super out in the open. I mean, I could even probably just knock on these people's doors and ask them if they'd let me set up, and I'm sure they'd be totally cool with it, and I'm sure they'd be pretty trustworthy, but we'll see. I'll see if I can find one on my own, and then if not, I might just do that. Will allow me to start shooting earlier. If there are any issues, it'll give me more time to potentially troubleshoot it. I don't know why the guiding, I tried to recalibrate it like several times last night, and I just could not get it under 1.5. I really need to get off-axis guiding because I just feel like I'll have better results with that. I've kind of got analysis paralysis on which ones to get. If you guys have any recommendations, I was looking at the one from QHY, but that's essentially the same thing. It does look like it's a higher quality build. Obviously there's ones from like Optech that are like, not, you know, $1,000 that have the electronic autofocus built in, but then that won't work with the ASIAIR, or I would consider investing that amount into it, because it is very critical to have perfect guiding and good focus on your guide camera. So I'll keep looking into it. A bunch of companies have them. Antlia has one with a filter drawer. That might be nice for my color camera, but you know, it's completely not needed obviously for my monocam, and I feel like it'll just add unnecessarily width. So I'll do some research on that, and hopefully I can find a good solution. So on the way back to the campsite, I see this campsite, and it actually has electrical at most of them, which is really nice, but it is like wide open. From an astrophotography standpoint, this is obviously super ideal, but I built a bit of a relationship with the people at River Forest Campground, and don't want to cheat on them. But hopefully we can get that opening a little bit bigger so that we can have a better time of it from an Okay, a little bit of an update while I'm driving around. I found this little restaurant kind of motel thing, and it has this awesome little river view here with some rapids and these big rock platforms. This is facing the south. This is the exact direction the Milky Way will be coming up. So I was thinking I could shoot with my camera, do a time lapse of the Milky Way with a really awesome foreground of this kind of flowing river here. And then that's the direction of my target, so I could position myself with my scope to have a wide open view. But this is really cool. The rocks just kind of gradually go right in here, so I'd have a nice stable base for my camera and tripod, probably do shorter exposures. The river would look awesome with like 8 to 10 second exposures at night. I could even do some foregrounds before it gets totally dark, and then just do a composite image with a stacked Milky Way on top. I probably will end up getting, not a star tracker, maybe like the GTI. I think that would be a really good one for you guys to review. I'm looking to use my Pelican 16-15 Air. It's the absolute largest size case you can get on a carry-on, and it fits my 90mm APO. I'd like to get a setup that could fit in there, between that and a backpack, so I could go all carry-on luggage for a quick trip and not have to pay any extra baggage fees. But I'm gonna call these guys and see if they'll let me set up. And then if I did get that set up, I could run my camera and do Milky Way stuff while my big scope was going. In my last video where I talked about the budget setup, that was my lightweight Milky Way option where you could go to 400mm. And like I said in that video, for $750 with GoTo, I already have an extra ASIAIR. So look at this, would be the direction I'm shooting. I mean, wide open. So I'm gonna call them. Are you with the motel and the restaurant? Is this the right number?
Crab and Jack.
Yeah, so I'm staying, I do astro and Milky Way photography, and I just came up kind of exploring to get away from light pollution. It's about a 3-hour drive, and I'm staying at the River Forest Campground, but I didn't realize it's really canopied over with trees. And so I see that you guys are closed. I was wondering if I could set up down by the river and with my camera and take some shots of the Milky Way from there, because it has a really nice foreground with the river flowing. If you guys would mind if I did that tonight.
No, I wouldn't mind. That wasn't fine. I'll let my brother know that he'll be down there, and just, you know, is this for social media, or what's it for?
Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel that I teach this stuff, but I also sell the prints and have a website that I'm starting, and it's just a hobby. I've been doing photography for a long time.
Just mention us, that'd be great.
Yeah, and the other thing I was thinking is I'll send you a full-size version of the final image, so if you guys want to put it on your website.
Yeah.
Boom. All right, we got our spot for tonight. I think I probably will bring out my scope too. So I don't know if I'm just gonna stay up all night or actually just set it up and then head back, get a few hours of sleep, and then just roll out in the morning. I don't know. So we'll see how I'm feeling. Last night I was pretty tired, and it was a struggle just to stay up till like midnight. So if I can get enough caffeine in the bloodstream. It's easier on night 2 because you know you can just go home and kind of sleep and recover. Night 1, you know, it's a little bit of a marathon at that point, and you want to get some sleep because you know you've got another long day ahead of you. So maybe try to go back to the cabin now, get some sleep, and yeah, I think we have a much better shot tonight of getting it done. Okay, so we're back at the river. It's getting somewhat close to sunset. We still got some time. I wanted to get some cool shots of the sunset and the river. And so I got my camera down there. Probably gonna set up the scope somewhere in this vicinity so I have a really big clear opening of the northern sky. And then the southern sky where the Milky Way is gonna be at. I'm gonna find a good spot for that. I'm thinking either this rock here, where I can be a little higher and get it, and then probably get the foreground lower, closer to the water. And I'll probably use my 50mm lens for the Milky Way and my 15 to 30 for the foreground. So it'll be kind of a deepscape-ish, where you use two different lenses, one to get kind of a cooler foreground, and then one to get more of a zoomed-in view of the Milky Way.
Stay till the morning.
So we're getting some Milky Way foregrounds right now. This is really when you want to shoot like golden hour, kind of dusk. You don't want to wait to do your foreground when it's really dark out, because then you're going to have to use a really high ISO, and then you're going to get a lot of noise in your photo. So what you do is you do a longer exposure now, and I'm only having to do about 1 second exposures, which will give a nice effect to the water. If you do like a 10-second exposure, the water is going to look totally smooth. We want to like give it that smoothed out a look, but we don't want to take away all the detail of the water. And then since I'm going to use the 50mm lens, I think, for everything, I'm going to end up just doing a pano. So I'm doing like a 2-second delay so that I'm not touching it, since it is a longer exposure. And then I'm just rotating it, giving it like a nice overlap. And then I'll take that into Photoshop. And then I'm basically getting it just to the top of the tree line so that I can then put the sky over the top of it. So I'll do that. I might do another level up then to actually make sure that I get that nice tree there, and then get the skyline, and then do like it'll be like a 6-way stack. You just want to make sure there's enough overlap, so Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever it is that you're using, to be able to stitch it all together. And then by getting the top of the tree line, then I can just substitute out this sky for the Milky Way images that I get. With 50mm, I'm probably gonna have to do like 5-second exposures, so probably gonna have to bump up the ISO. Probably shoot at f2 or 2.2 just to allow it to collect more light. I didn't realize that there are a little bit of these lights here, but I don't think that's gonna really mess with us too much here, hopefully. But yeah, sky looks really clear. And we'll be doing dual duty tonight, get in the Milky Way and continue to hit the Squid Nebula. Hopefully we'll have a better luck than last night. All right, well, we got the polar alignment done, and just running the autofocus right now. I'm gonna hide out in the car for a little bit, redo the batteries on this, because the mosquitoes are pretty savage out here, even though I have completely doused myself in DEET. So, got everything set up. Polar alignment went really smooth. We got the guide scope really focused, so I'm hoping tonight we get a lot better guiding and whatnot. We don't have any issues. Yeah, 2.64 on the focus. That's really nice and tight. So we'll check back in a little bit. All right, we're officially imaging. I'm just gonna wait for the first exposure to finish, 10 minutes. Guiding's going much better tonight. We're 0.5, so much better than last night. I really have no idea why. I'm gonna go back to the campground, charge the camera battery for the Nikon that's on the tripod. I'm doing 6-second exposure, ISO 4000 at f2, and it's doing a pretty good job. So I'm letting that do a time lapse, and I'm gonna go back and charge the other battery, and then come back out and check on things in like an hour or two. All right, well, it's 3:15 and I couldn't sleep knowing my gear was out here. You can just start to see the sky starting to light up a little bit. Unlike last night, it looks like we were pretty successful. I've got about almost 300 minutes, so about 5 hours of pretty good data. I spot checked 5 or 6 images. I'm going to collect my mirrorless camera real quick. I'm sure it ran out of battery already, and then I'm going to quickly pack up my stuff, try to get a couple hours of sleep, although I don't know how successful that'll be, and then head out in the morning. All right, we are heading home. It's the next morning, and last night was a total redemption. We'll be able to use every single 10-minute frame we got, and then the
But you had your cake and you eating it too. Fuck, you never thought you'd go you got around, guess I loved you in denial. Shouldn't have left receipts, now I got you on fire. Shit might get released when you walk down the aisle. Expose who you are beneath that fake ass smile. A couple songs about you and I told the truth through and through. Never name drop, you guilty if you assume it's you. From laying under covers to staying under your skin, I know exactly what it was, fuck what it is. Stay thinking out loud and think about how the vibe changed quicker than 1,000,000 miles an hour. I felt bad for whatever I said, but whatever's dead, I hope I see you never again. It could've been me in the